AI has been widely used in cybersecurity for a long, long time because of just the raw amount of data to process. Um, and that's why we're dependent on these tools to do this work. Um,
The same way the
because
attackers are for improving some of their attack vectors.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, those phishing emails that you were talking about, I send. I use ChatGPT and Copilot to write an enormous amount of them
Mm-hmm.
um, because they're so good at that toneless support email that you'll get from an organization that I'm like, you know, you know how they said that Benjamin Franklin wasn't allowed to write the Declaration of Independence because they thought he'd put a joke in it. It's the same way with me in
I
phishing
haven't heard
emails.
that one, but yeah, I'm similar to you in that way.
Yeah, and ChatGPT doesn't do that. There's no flair. There's no personality to it. There's no, English is a second language uh, kind of tells that a lot of people have been trained to look for because so many people think that they're impervious to attack because they can
Mm-hmm.
see typos. Those don't exist anymore. And ideally, when like the rate at which we're finding vulnerabilities out in the world and the rate at which patches are being released and proof of concepts or POCs are being released publicly, I, you know, there's probably people out there who want to pretend that's not AI and it's just something else that's going on. But a portion of that is because of AI. It's analyzing open source code. People are openly putting up POCs. The barrier of entry is so much lower on the offensive side because of these AI tools that the rate from something being reported as a vulnerability to something being reported as a known exploited vulnerability um, is so slow, and the rate at discovery is creating such a backlog of vulnerability registrations that um, trying to stay on top of it all without any kind of automation is going to be
This is
nearly
not being
impossible.
prescriptive. This is not saying you must have a SIEM, you must have MDR, you must have EDR. Actually, no, let's go to XDR and talk about extended defense and response. We are talking about something as simple as investing time, and yeah, money comes along with it as well in terms of the products and the things that need to be put in place, but not doing anything is no longer going to be okay. And I think it's really interesting. You mentioned Bill C-27. One of the elements in there is some of the fines for people who are found to be not compliant. And again, this is very hypothetical at the moment because it has not been fully published or fully recognized. But if it comes out, the number that they're talking about for a fine is 3% of your previous year's revenue, which incidentally, most studies, most analyses that you talk about, 3% of revenue is roughly what you should be spending on information technology and information security combined. I mean, they're starting to break it apart, but traditionally it's been 3% of your revenue spent on this. So why not do it in advance? Why not make sure you're staying
Mm-hmm.
safe? If there is this fine that's being added to it, this is again in addition to any ransoms that you might be hit with if you are being double extorted, if you're talking about the level of elements that go into remediation, the cost to do the remediation, the downtime, like we mentioned previously for some of these businesses who have been compromised, the reputational hits, which absolutely cannot be quantified, but nonetheless are there. And some of the statistics back this up. We're seeing things from Verizon on their data breach report where they're talking about 60% of small mid-sized enterprises do have to close their doors. They go out of business within 6 months of a major security incident. 60%. Like
Yeah.
that's a very real number to take back. And it's something that's staggering to me if your business and you don't think about the people you serve, that's inexcusable. But in this case, you're even talking about you're not protecting yourself, you're not protecting your staff, your livelihood. 60% of businesses in the small mid-sized enterprise that get compromised no longer functioning after 6 months.
Yeah, and the average response time, like remediation time for a ransomware incident, ours is lower, thankfully, but industry average is 72 days. So most organizations, I mean, unless they have some substantial windfall, probably can't keep their doors closed for what is that, 2.5 months, 3 months? Yeah, about 2.5 months. Just because of somebody halfway around the world thought that they would get a quick buck by going and running some software on your servers. Um, and they'll probably, for a smaller company, they may or may not be caught. There may or may not be any kind of punishment that you can rely on, uh, or closure. It's just your business is gone. And I mean, me and you have worked with small businesses for a long time, and medium enterprise, and we know that there's a lot of heart in it. I know when I used to work for a large Fortune 500, nobody cared, especially at the executive level. Um, but when you're talking about like SMEs, there's a lot of heart in it. Like those, yeah, you might have a 25-person organization, but you know those 25 people, you've known them for a long time, and there's a certain amount of pride that you have in
yeah,
that they're supporting their families because of the environment that you've created. Um, and especially in the case of a family business, there's even more of that level. And when we respond to an incident, at the SME level, like for the business leaders, for the business owners, there's a, a lot of pain and guilt that they feel when these incidents happen. I mean, if when we go on site, people will, there might be some employee he's just got his hands in his pockets. And I remember one time there was a guy who was just standing outside kind of kicking the dust in the parking lot because there was nothing else to do, and he was just kind of feeling down, and it was just that posture kind of Charlie Browned over with kicking little dust clouds. And the business leader was kind of watching him, and just the disappointment on his face because they were a blue collar business. They didn't rely on the computer. They didn't think about it. But the second they can't pay their staff, the second that they can't, process orders, in some cases that I mentioned earlier, a lot of this operational technology is actually in place to keep people safe or to keep your equipment safe to use.
Vaughn, when we talk about cybersecurity, like this isn't something that ever sleeps. This is something that is always on the rise and only changing and getting worse day by day.
Yeah, it's something that's 24/7, 365. It's a continuous process, and cybersecurity as a whole changes day after day, and it's
Right.
changing faster and faster. So the idea of spending 1 month out of the year to focus on it, it's great for awareness and for getting people
Yes.
involved, but this is something it's a continuous process. I wish I could only work 1 month a year.
Yes, it'd be great to be able to take that home. Basically, if you were essentially the opposite of teachers, I guess.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
we look at this and we're talking about like the awareness. This isn't something that ends here. We do encourage everybody, and I know a lot of the businesses that we protect, we put in a lot of cybersecurity training, privacy awareness elements in their business, and even that's often not enough. I encourage anybody that I'm talking to on a regular basis to stay informed about what's going on in the world.